Hello, happy Friday, or whatever day it is that you happen to be watching my video. So we are heading into Unit 5 this next week, and I just wanted to give you a quick overview and just maybe some background information in terms of what we're going to be talking about and what you're going to be working on. So this is kind of a busy week. There's a few things due this week. Another analysis of your intake. This week, we're specifically looking at lipids. So just kind of walking you through. And again, I keep recommending to everybody to make sure that you capture everything, to view your weeks in the module form. If you can get on a computer, it's much better than your phone. You're going to see everything. So here's what it looks like. You'll start off with your module overview. There are textbooks. For those of you who didn't hear that previously, we do have the textbooks. They're big. For any of you who've gotten them, it's like, it's a big book. I think part of the reason it's big is there's not a lot of writing in it, but the pictures in the downloaded PDF they turned out to be big pictures, like they take up half the page. So I'm kind of working with the authors to find out if there's a way to make that more concise so that the cost would come down a little bit for those of you who need it. What my students are telling me, what some of you have told me, is that that's helpful in terms of being able to look at the guided notes and then just highlight the sections in the textbook that would answer those questions in the guided notes, so you know where those important parts are. And then that's been incredibly helpful for the exams. So for those of you who feel like you're just kind of struggling on the exams, that might be a way to either print off that information yourself at home, or if you want to get it, I believe it's $60. So just to let you know. So again, have all that information here for you. I have a couple of videos this week just talking about lipids. I think it's a good way to get started. Take a peek at that. Can't go into talking about lipids without talking about the most popular diet out there right now, and that's keto. So really just taking a peek at what is the science behind keto. And I'll tell you, you can find pro and con. You can find some pretty reputable research studies that say this is the best way to go. This is good for metabolic syndrome. There's a lot of stuff out there too. The flip side, whereas this is just bad for your body. You shouldn't be doing this. So the actual final on it is probably still out in terms of what exactly is the best way to go. If you've done, I always feel, if you've done keto, you feel like it works for you, if it makes sense to your body, to your ways of eating, and it allows you to attain the health goals you're shooting for, then there's evidence to support that this is maybe okay. If you like carbs, if you like fruit, if you like having whole grains, and this doesn't make sense to you, there's evidence to support eating that way also. So I'm just going to throw that out there for you. The discussion this week, and I just want to pull this up. A couple of you have commented to me that you don't really like having to do the discussion midweek. And so I just want to get you started off early on doing this discussion. But for this week, really what I want you to do is pick a favorite recipe of yours. If you don't have a favorite recipe, one of the apps that I use to find new recipes is this Yummly.com. The reason I like it's free. I always go for free stuff. The reason I like it is I can put in there, I don't do keto, but maybe I want to lower carb meals for the week because I'm trying to cut carbs because I just am. And so I might find some lower carb stuff, or maybe I'm filling up on fruit and I don't need it at my meals. So I might look at it for that reason. Or if you have other health issues, it allows you to kind of pinpoint those. Then what Yummly does is it goes out to the broader World Wide Web and looks at all the different recipes that might fit within those guidelines. I've done it for Mediterranean cooking and come up with some great recipes that way. So kind of a fun way to do it. If you have your own recipe, that's fine. What you're going to do then is go into this recipe calculator, and you're going to enter your information into the recipe calculator. And it's going to print off for you what your current recipe, you're going to write out what is my current recipe. This is the example of what you're going to be posting. So what am I currently eating, and what's my current recipe, and what is the nutrition information? Really what I'm shooting for on this nutrition information: calories, protein, grams of fat, saturated fat, sodium, particularly because for this chapter, we're talking a little more about heart disease. And then what I want you to do is go back in there and look at how can you modify this recipe to decrease the fat content. Now, I just talked about keto. Some of you may be trying to increase your fat content, but for purposes of heart health, the American Heart Association recommends lower fat, lower saturated fat. So for purposes of this assignment, if you can find something and then work through how do I lower the fat content of it. And so then you're going to go and do the recipe analyzer and get the data on that side of it. So here's kind of what you're shooting for in terms of your original post. You can get started on that today so you get it done early. And then kind of take a peek, look at what some of your other students have done, and see what kind of recipes they've come up with and make some commentary on that. If you happen to want to go like one step above, you could make your recipe and take a picture and put it in there for us. That would be kind of fun. And let us know how the modified recipe turned out. I've had in previous, well, actually it was just this last couple of semesters, people were like, it just didn't taste good. So it's always good to kind of play around with that and then go circle back to it. So kind of a fun little discussion this week. Hopefully you guys enjoy that and find that useful. So that's that. So that's going to be your discussion. We're going to be looking at keto, and then you're going to have the quiz. I really quickly just wanted to do a quick, since I don't, but I also don't get to lecture. So I just wanted to walk you through a little bit of information here in terms of, I don't know how to make this bigger so you don't have to see all my slides on the side without going, I'll go whoop. I think I just went away. And then I'm going to pull this over just so you don't see all my, well, maybe it won't let me. I guess it won't let me. Oh, there we go. Nope. Won't let me change the size. Well, there you go. So that's sort of what you have. So when we're talking about fats, I always feel like it's important. We talk a lot about like the chemistry of fats. And, we break it down to really just looking at saturated fat versus monounsaturated fat. Should I have it? Should I not have it? And along with those fats, just like we talked about with carbohydrates, they're food. They're not just fat, right? So we're not just looking at that as a component. So I think it's really important to look at what are the nutrients. Omega-3s, there's a whole host of information about omega-3s and the benefits of omega-3s. I have kind of this list here for you in terms of what they can do. Your brain is made up of fat, right? We're basically fat heads, I guess you could say. All of us are, because that's where the fat is in our body. So your brain is made up of fat. This research tended to show that children's IQ can increase by 3.5. What's IQ? Well, kind of an interesting commentary there. But from birth and throughout those early years, as that brain's developing, getting an adequate amount of omega-3s, particularly from marine sources, so particularly from fish that are higher in omega-3s, can be helpful. So if you've got kids, think about that. Triglyceride levels, for people who know what their blood levels are, omega-3s can help reduce triglycerides by as much as 30%. The omega-3s are very important in a lot of the hormones that the body throws out, and so changing that mix of hormones that can reduce blood pressure really reduces this, if you will, the very basic terms, the stickiness of your platelets. And so we have a reduction in the rates of, by a significant amount, 50% reduction in rates of stroke. Really reduces coronary artery disease primarily through this mechanism here. So very beneficial from that. Olive oil. Olive oil in particular itself, not just because it's a monounsaturated fat, but because it actually has some different nutrients in it, is particularly helpful for the body. So benefits of olive oil, if you can add olive oil into your diet, there's some great information out there about olive oil. You'll read a little bit about it in the book. So great one to take a look at. And then just in general, nutrients and fat, right? You've got vitamin A, which is so important for vision, especially for that premature infant and through that early childhood. If you're pregnant, getting in adequate amounts of healthy fats is going to be helpful in terms of that development of the eye. And we do see macular degeneration. So important to get those good sources of fat. Your fat-soluble vitamins are absorbed much better in a fatty solution. So if you're on a really low-fat diet, you don't have the opportunity to absorb them quite as well. Vitamin D, again, some of your fatty foods, so fish oil supplements can have them, egg yolks, obviously the sun has it. Vitamin E, very important in terms of fat. Okay, so just thinking in terms of these foods that have fat, the nutrients that they bring with them. The other thing you get with fat is it helps with satiety. So important to Make sure that you don't go so low fat that you're meeting kind of those guidelines. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about this in this chapter, is really looking at how much fat should you get in your diet. And then of course, you're going to go to your dietary analysis of fat, and you're going to see how you're doing on that. And then you're going to make recommendations to yourself in terms of how you would do better with this. And so quick on this, while we're looking at this, I just wanted to show you a couple things. I do have you're probably like, why does she need me to keep uploading this? I reference that. So when you put the information in about your diet, I go back and I want to reference it, and it's just easier for me if it's right here to see it. So again, you can use your same 3 days that you used previously. That's fine. Question 2 here, and I this came up actually in my face-to-face class. I didn't realize students didn't realize that you don't know what you don't know, right? So when you're looking at this on a big screen, it's a little more apparent. Here's the question. Here's kind of what I want your answer to be right here. And here's how you calculate it. If you tab over, each one of these have a tab. So how do you do that calculation? You're going to put your calorie goal from your GB Health Watch, multiply it across, and divide by 9, because there's 9 calories per gram, and it's going to give you grams. So this is showing you, so again, your calorie goal times 0.35, right? So 20 to 35% of your calories should come from fat. And so here's my goal for this. Targets for saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated, they're all the same. Ideally less than 10% for saturated fat. If you have no saturated fat, there's no need to add foods for that, just to say, but you want it to be less than 10%. So all 3 of them are going to be the same calculation, 2,000 times 0.1, which is 10%, right? Convert that over to grams by dividing that, because you know there's 9 calories per gram, and you get 22. So for each one of these, it's going to be the same. And then I've given you the omega-3 recommendation. So for females, it's 1.1. For males, it's 1.6 grams. So your sample answer is going to look like this. Okay, so again, you've got little click boxes here. If you just go through, it's pretty quick and easy to do that. You're going to do the same thing here again. You're going to, I don't know if I showed this on the last one, so I'm going to show it again. To replicate this table, some of you were able to copy and paste it. If you can't, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6. So you can actually insert a table and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, and insert the table. Make sure you get them all. If you didn't get them all, I think you can tab and add one. Yes. So you can put the table in this way, and then you can copy and paste. I've found that you can just kind of copy this stuff across the top. And I think it pastes it. Well, let's see if it does. Paste. Nope, it didn't do it, so don't do that. So don't do that. I think you can copy across the top column, but it doesn't like doing the bottom column. So sorry about that. Just don't do that. So you're going to go ahead. These numbers right here are coming again from what you calculated up above. So they're going to be these numbers here. I just want you to put them down here so you have this visual. So you're going to have that. Your intake from your GB Health report. So you're going to your GB Health and you're looking at what was my total fat, what was my saturated fat, and then you're just notating, is it above or below recommendations. Saturated fat, if it's below, that's great. You don't need to add more. Make some commentary in terms of, how you did with that. Again, here, you're going to identify your leading sources of total and saturated fat, and how many grams were in each of these foods. And I didn't put an example on this one. So again, each date that you did it, go back to GB Health Watch. For those of you who aren't familiar, I'm going to show you real quick. So if you go to reports, and then you have to go to the date that you put food in. So I've got some food intake here. So I'm on this date, the 14th, where I put food in. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to look at my total fat intake. And I'm not seeing it because, of course, it's not super apparent to me. If for some reason you cannot find, I must not have eaten much fat that day. And I'm not seeing my saturated fat, so that's kind of a good indicator. If that happens and you're not seeing, oh, here's saturated fat. My total fat for some reason is not showing, which is just kind of interesting. So take a look at your saturated fat, click on the happy face. It's going to tell me what my three top sources of saturated fat are. So I'm seeing where my saturated fat's coming from. And I don't know if I'm just not seeing it or if I don't have any fat. So if that happens for you, you can put in there no data for that, no data for total fat intake. So again, here I'm going to look at saturated fat. It's going to give me my top sources. And it's interesting, it's not showing me my total fat intake. And I don't know on mine if that's just, no, it's at 20%. So it's kind of interesting. It's not showing me top sources of fat, or if I'm just not seeing it. So if you can't find that, just put in there, not able to find. I haven't had an issue with that before. So, and again, going to the next date, putting that information in for that date. And you can only put in what you can find. If you're not seeing sources of it, then you're not seeing sources of it. So here's saturated fat. For some reason, it's not showing total fat at all. I wonder if they've removed that. If that's the case, you can't put it in there. So just notate no total fat showing in there. That's kind of interesting. Okay, so that's that. What changes would you make? So what do you need to do to make these recommendations? Again, if you're following a diet that's say a high-fat diet because you're doing keto, I want you to approach this from a standpoint of, what would I do to make my diet meet the dietary guidelines? And I'm not telling you have to not eat the way you are, or you should eat a certain way. I just want you to demonstrate that you're able to look at the data and how would I move this data so it would meet this set of guidelines. So again, not making you do that, but I want to know that you know how to utilize the information and put it in such a form. So anyway, that's what we're going on. We are on fats. Leave the student view. It won't let me leave student view for some reason. Yes. And so that's kind of a wrap with this week's information. We're going to be hitting fat and taking a look at fat. So a couple videos to watch. I think those are pretty good with the video questions that are in there. The dietary analysis of fat. You've got your discussion coming up. You're going to be reading all about, all the amazing things with fat and the chemistry behind fat, which is always super cool. So anyway, have a great week, and as always, reach out with any questions.